Мы счастливы быть в вашей стране и иметь возможность лучше познакомиться с вашей культурой. Наши выступления являются между нашими странами. Мы хотим познакомить вас с американской культурой, народными, современными песнями и танцами. And I don't hardly even remember what I said, and I probably missed
some of the words right now. But
so if anybody speaks Russian, извините, пожалуйста.
Hi, and welcome to And If Love Remains. I am your host, Mike Levitt, and I'm very pleased to be with my good friends, Gen and Nancy Genys, and I'm happy to do another episode of our love story series with this wonderful couple. And welcome to the show, Gen and Nancy. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Michael. Nice to be here.
Fabulous. Well, I love talking about origin stories and how did all this happen. So let's talk a little bit, maybe a little BN, a little before Nancy again. Talk to us. Where did you come from? Tell us a little bit about your background. Who is Gen?
Well, my story begins in Australia because I was born in Canberra, Australia, and my parents were both Lithuanian. They came to Australia after the Second World War as refugees, and so for me, my first language was Lithuanian, spoken at home, and I grew up very much with a flavour and a culture of Lithuania sort of in my blood and in my home. And anyway, when I got through schooling in Australia, I had made a decision to come overseas to study and to see a bit of the world. So I actually came to the United States to go to school. I went to school at Ricks College in Rexburg, Idaho. Interesting enough, this was a church school for the LDS church, but I was not a member of it. In fact, I knew very little about Latter-day Saints, Mormons. But at that time, I had a friend that convinced me to come to Ricks College. It was a great school and great facilities and cute girls. And
when he says facilities, he's talking about sporting facilities.
Oh yeah, basketball facilities. And
yeah,
he played for the state. Well, the ACT isn't a state, but it was treated like one with the sporting things. So the volleyball. Uh-huh. So he skied and surfed and played basketball and volleyball, and that was kind of his life. So the appeal to go to Ricks College was, one, to go to a foreign country, two, they had great sporting facilities, and the guy said really cute girls. So that was the...
There's all that.
He was right on all three counts, especially the cute girls. Oh my gosh.
That's fabulous. So you went to Ricks, and
so I did. I went to Ricks for 2 years, and actually tried to stay a third year, even though it's a 2-year school. I ran for student body office, and only came in second. So I didn't get to stay, but it was all meant to be. But I did actually join the church at the end of my second year. Transferred to BYU, and at BYU I then went off and got called to an overseas mission where I was sent to the Australia-Brisbane area.
Oh, wow.
Kind of back to my home country.
Well, just out of curiosity, how close was that to where you grew up?
About 700 miles north. So
us Yanks don't know much about Australia.
Well, it would be like if you were from, say, Los Angeles, but you actually came up to Idaho.
Yeah, okay.
It's not that close.
Right on.
But,
okay.
Anyway, so that's kind of my pre-Nancy life.
Right on.
I was at college at BYU after returning back from Australia, and yeah.
And what were you at that time? Before you met Nancy, what were your goals? What kind of things did you have in mind as far as maybe vocation? What were you thinking about? What was your mindset?
I had actually planned all along that when I went overseas to study, I would come back to Australia and I would work in my father's construction company, and eventually he would retire, and I'd be
take over
the family business. That was the intent, the goal, the idea. But I've got to tell you, life does not always go the way you plan it. In fact, quite differently so. So here I am, living in northern Idaho, retired.
With lots of animals and still a lot of kids.
Yeah, there we go. So
that's exciting. Nancy, what about you? Tell me about pre-Gen. Tell me about your growing up and.
Well, so I grew up in Henderson, Nevada, and I always just wanted to get married and have a family. And I used to write down the kids' names because I always wanted to have 8 children, 5 boys and 3 girls. I've ended up having 7 children, 5 boys and 2 girls.
Oh wow!
And none of them have
ideas,
none of them have the names that I had picked out in my youth. But
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
No, but anyway, so we I love dance, and I used to take dance when I was a young girl, and piano and singing, and that was the arts was always really attractive to me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom is handicapped, and quite severely so. I don't remember her walking very much. I remember by the time I was in 4th grade, she had to hold on to 2 of us kids to go anywhere. Oh wow! If we had to go to the school, my sister and I would be on either side of her for her balance. And then I remember she would progress to using a walker and then a wheelchair, and now she's been in bedridden for decades.
Oh wow!
So I grew up with a lot of responsibility at the home, and it's funny because I never really had any great ambition at all, except for to just get married and have a family. And it's also funny because one fellow that I was engaged to before I was engaged to my husband, one of his complaints about me is he thought that I was going to be boring and I had no ambition. And
oh my gosh!
If only he knew.
If only he knew.
He probably does.
No, he doesn't. But it's just funny because I changed a lot. I've changed a lot.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so did you go to BYU or?
I did. So I was in my sophomore year. So when I went to BYU, I got into as many dance classes as I could my first year, and which was a lot. And I attracted the gaze of the dance department heads. Mm-hmm. So Suzanne Davis asked me in my freshman year, "Are you enrolled in the teacher's training course?" And I was like, I didn't even know what that was.
Right.
So I obviously said no, and she said, "I need you to enroll." So I got in for the fall semester, in January. So I started in
winter semester.
Yeah, I don't remember now. It's been too many years, but I got in whenever the next one was. And even though I hadn't finished my course, I was assisting Don Allen, who was also a department head. He is since deceased. He was a specialist in not just folk dancing, but square dancing. And so other universities would bring him. And I hadn't even finished the course, and he would have me teach his classes while he was gone. And so, and then I ended up getting invited to join the International Folk Dance Team by Mary B. Jensen, who said, "Okay, Don Allen and Suzanne Davis, they're all just talking about you. We need you to be part of our team." But I was a peon. Gen was a hotshot. So he had toured the world with Rick's College and BYU before he was
on the ballroom dance team.
No, folk dance.
The folk dance team.
Yeah, so he had gone at that time. The Iron Curtain was still in existence, and he was in the first group allowed to go behind the Iron Curtain, and he still remembers the talks he got to be the person who gave them on national television.
What was that like, Gen?
Well, I think it's a unique event in my life that I'll never forget, because we went to so many different Eastern European nations. I mean, if I run through, Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Poland, Russia, and in all of those Iron Bloc countries, each had their own unique flavor, but it was a huge contrast between the freedom of the West and how people had to live in those other countries. And of course, it was it was just unique, because I come from a country which was now part of the the Soviet bloc. The three Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, were all under the the rule of the Russia.
Right.
Anyway, it also was unique for me, because when we were in Moscow, my uncle, aunt, and only first cousin, who were all had remained in Lithuania after the war,
because he was too young to flee.
Mm-hmm.
They came to see me in Moscow. It was just a unique.
Wow.
It's a kind of a long. I don't want to give the whole story now.
Yeah.
But, that was my only opportunity that I had ever had to meet them, and them to meet me.
Because they would have had to they had to get special papers.
Yeah, it
Wow.
was not a
Quite an
time when
ordeal.
people can just not like we used to here.
Where you can just get in the car and go. That there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Wow,
Anyway, so-
what a amazing experience. That's
Yeah. But I think for everyone that went on that tour, it was very unique and special, and we all had to learn parts of each of these languages as well, because we had to make introductions.
right.
And,
Narrations or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, certain of us had a rather lengthy introduction to make, because the show would start out, and in several countries we were filmed in a movie studio. That was the case in Russia and in Poland. Some places we had a very big stage. Others we were in actual festivals and things. But anyway.
And then they would they broadcast it on national television.
Right.
So I got to be the one that had the Russian. I had to memorize a Russian sort of introduction. I sort of still remember it after 40 years, because I parroted.
Come on, give us a little taste.
Мы счастливы быть в вашей стране и иметь возможность лучше познакомиться с вашей культурой. Наши выступления являются между нашими странами. Мы хотим познакомить вас с американской культурой, народными, современными песнями и танцами. And I don't hardly even remember what I said, and I probably missed some
of the words right now. But
So if anybody speaks Russian, извините, пожалуйста.
it's been 42 years since he went.
Oh, that's
But
amazing.
I used to sit.
I can
sit
only
in the bathroom,
imagine.
and I'd be saying this over and over to myself.
And then you're trying to remind yourself. I can imagine, because I know when one is on tour, like sometimes it's hard to remember what city you're in.
And ironically, this was done with a very small studio audience in a Russian sort of television station, and I did that introduction, and midway through it, the audience sort of busted up laughing or chuckled. I must have mispronounced something completely, or said, must have said, I'm a toilet head or something. I don't know. But anyways.
Oh, that's great.
So when I met him, he was living in the Russian house at BYU. So he was pretty fluent in Russian by the time I met him. So he was fluent in Lithuanian, English, and Russian, and then pretty good at German, and he had studied French. So he had 5 languages under his belt at that time. His dad had 8. So I'm not sure which other ones your dad spoke. I think Polish.
Well, Polish and others. The thing is that most people who are from Europe, since they're surrounded by other countries that are close by, and they all speak different languages, it was not unusual for people to know their neighbours' couple of languages, the French, German, Spanish, or Polish, Russian, and so forth.
Okay, but Nancy, you kind of jumped the gun. I want to hear how you guys met. What you guys met on the folk team, but how did that happen?
No, we actually
you didn't.
didn't. So so remember, I'd been teaching for Don Allen. I'd been assisting Suzanne. They had me kind of going all over the place helping people. And Suzanne Davis had said to me, I'm going to give you your own class because then you get paid, which is really wonderful. You get paid to be a student teacher.
Yeah.
And she called me up in, I think, December, before we left for the break. And she said, Nancy, I know I promised you your own class, but I have a teacher who needs an assistant. And I promise I'll give you a class the next semester. Because when you're an assistant, you don't get paid.
Mm.
You get experience, but you don't get paid. And I said, okay, Suzanne, I'll do it. And it was to assist Gin.
Okay.
So I had heard of him. He was a hotshot. I knew he hadn't heard of me. So I had told this girl, and I'm not even going to say her name, that I was going to be his assistant. So she told me that she was engaged to Gin.
Okay.
And she told Gin that I was engaged to somebody else.
But she didn't tell me that I was engaged to her.
That was news to you.
Yeah.
Didn't find that out later, but
So anyway, she wanted to make sure that
She had her.
She
Had
covered
a
all
backup
bases.
plan?
Yeah. So I went into class that first day, and Gin says, I still remember that black dress. So I had a black dress on, and I taught the class, and I was like, there's all these girls that are hanging about here, and he's flirting with him. This guy is a rat bag or a dirty dog. He's engaged to this girl, and he's flirting with all these guys.
these girls.
These girls. These girls. Oh, all these girls. And I'm like,
I know in America it's kind of unusual because that was one of the things that was hard for me to understand is that in America, everybody's referred to as guys, even girls.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus you blow your nose in toilet paper. These are unusual.
So anyway, he was flirting with all these girls, and I thought, oh, this guy's a scumbag. Like, seriously.
Right.
And then he needed me for another class, so I was teaching 2 different classes with him. And in both classes, all these girls were hanging out with this guy, and he's flirting with them, and none of them are this girl that he's engaged to. So,
I don't think I was really flirting.
Yeah, I want to hear your perspective in a second.
well, they did. Were there not girls that were hanging out all the time?
Well, yeah, but they just like to hear the accent, That's how I get introduced. This is, again, he's from Australia. Say something. Speak.
Oh, you're so cute.
So he had all these little groupies that liked his accent.
It is easy to flirt when all you got to do is talk.
That's right. So he was not impressed with me at first. Well, he just...
What did you think, Gin? When you...
She's a cutie. But my general experience with beautiful girls, and I don't know if this is typical or not, but there's a tendency for them to kind of feel as though they're pretty cool, and they're particular about who they'll chum around with and all this sort of stuff. So they have a tendency to be kind of stuck up on themselves. So that's just been my experience, and
so she felt in that. You felt like she was in that.
So I figured she's probably just not somebody that I would be able to get to know real well or to be interested in, because I'm just this. Well, you already stated I'm this schlep who's.
Well, no, but you weren't a schlep. I thought he was a schlep, but he wasn't. But he also thought, because he said, I thought you were too cute to be smart. Because most girls that were really cute, in his experience, not that I'm really cute. He thought I was cute.
She's cute.
She's cute.
She's still cute.
But anyway,
for 40 years, and she's just as cute as can be.
I love you.
Aww.
So anyway, but he thought that I was probably like the dumb, sorry cheerleaders, but the dumb cheerleader, the dumb blonde type that had
that stereotype.
The stereotype, no substance.
Yeah.
And so that's what his first impression of me was. So neither one of us started out on a particularly good foot with each other.
I love it. So you're assisting him.
I'm assisting him
in teaching his classes.
Yeah.
And so you obviously had to talk to each other, and
right.
And
Yeah, so he invited me to go to the Cougar Eat for an ice water after class so we could talk about
I mean, the thing is, after the first couple of classes, I mean, we need to sit down and talk and get to know each other better and be able to work as a team and so forth. And the Cougar Eat is just the eatery cafeteria.
Yeah.
Our class was just right down from it.
Yeah, and, I think we joke about this now, but in hindsight, she should have realized just what a skinflint I am because
he invited me for an ice water.
That's the only freebie that you get there. But at that time, and I've got to tell you, I mean, I was not a student that had money. I had a car that was from Heck, and
I could hear him coming because he'd come down the hill, and every time he downshifted, it backfired. So we, and on our first date, the car didn't start, so we came to the parking lot, and it didn't start.
Yeah, I came in the parking lot of her multiplex where there's a big parking area and lots of kids and boys out there shooting baskets.
So I dated a lot, 2 to 3 dates a day, most days. And so when he came to get me, all the guys in the parking lot were looking to see who I was going out with.
It was this third date for the day, This guy, some bomb that showed up.
And then the car wouldn't start.
Yeah.
Okay, but we got to back up. So we go to ice water.
Yeah.
We both found out at the ice water that this thing of being engaged and stuff was not true.
A trick of.
So I had been engaged, but I'd been broken up since September.
Yeah.
And I'd never been engaged, and I have the massive fear of doing so.
So then I asked him, because he was going by Gin, and I said, "Is that your whole name?" And he's like, "No, my name is Gintaras Vitotas Genys." And I was like, "Whoa, that is so cool," because I was Nancy K. Jones. I mean, how, you've got one extreme on the other, right?
Right.
And so I said, "Can you write this down for me?" So he took the little card that was sent on the Cougar Eat table, and he wrote his name out. And every day I looked at it, and I practiced to be able to say his name, because I thought it was just
impressive.
Cool.
The irony is, though, I mean, Nancy has a fairly simple name by comparison, and always, so an exotic name sounded good. Me, I'm like, boy, if only I'd had a name like John Smith for a time, that would be so easy. I can tell you stories about my grown-up years.
Actually,
where my
so you
name
want to know
was
something
butchered.
funny? Huh? So, because when he went to school, the teachers never got it right. He, to this day, can remember every other kid in his class that had a weird name and how to spell it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
John Kachuachak, Kicurczak. Alexander Lubieski, Lubijewski.
That's amazing.
But anyway, so they'd always read off the names at the beginning of the semester, the school year, and you always know when they got to my name because there'd be a moment of silence. And then there'd be some butchering of the name. And then, the one that I really got embarrassed about was when it was, "Oh, would she stand up, please?" So, anyway,
right here.
I can appreciate, that Johnny Cash song, "A Boy Named Sue," story. But probably tough for a lot of kids who are from other countries. And,
for sure.
You can never get their name right,
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. That's awesome. And so you practiced his name so you could speak it well in class and talk to him properly. And
yeah.
And when did you go on your first date? How did that?
Well, so I have to tell a little bit. So Gin is not the regular kind of guy I dated. So most of the guys I dated were jocks, or well off, or
yeah.
I was a broke schlep
from Aussie.
Ice water.
He wasn't a schlep. He was actually. So once I really realized that he wasn't engaged, I started looking at him like, so who is this guy? But I had had a really painful experience with another guy, and I had prayed a lot and fasted a lot and sought Heavenly Father's guidance, and I had made a promise to Heavenly Father that I will listen to you, because I had been warned to break up with this other guy, and I did, and then I got talked back into it by the girls in my dorm because he was rich and he was handsome and, you know, all of these sorts of things that you're supposed to want. But the Spirit had told me no, and I didn't listen. And then in the end, it ended up causing me a great amount of pain. And so I had made it a promise to Heavenly Father that I would listen, that I wanted who He wanted me to marry, that I wanted to be with who He knew was going to be right for me. And I was also, my eyes were really open. I looked at other people's marriages, and I knew I didn't want a marriage like that or that or that. I wanted somebody who was going to be my friend, and somebody who would be loyal, and somebody that wouldn't be afraid to change diapers or, you know, to get in there and do the hard work.
Right.
I wanted somebody who was spiritual and somebody who was going to take care of me as well. So I kept getting urged by the Spirit to look at him, you know, and I'm like, this is not my regular kind of guy, you know, and it's like and so every time we had any interaction, I would go home and pray. Am I supposed to still move forward with this? Yes. And so for me, my interactions with him were always Spirit-led. Am I supposed to do this? And then I started, I think at Valentine's Day, I brought in a cookie and I left it for you in the drawer of the podium where the stuff was, and I wrote his name on it. Something like Happy Valentine's Day or something like that.
You did a whole bunch of really nice things, you know. I mean, she's a cake decorator extraordinaire. I mean, she used to have a cake business, cake shop and everything in Australia, and she's taught cake decorating a lot. But anyway, so she'd made a Ziggy cake for me and left it off at, at the Russian house, and just did all these really sweet things. I mean, you know.
Wow.
And so, he asked me out on a date, and it was the funnest first date. He had a roommate named Misha, and Misha, he took me ice skating, which I don't know how to ice skate or roller skate because my dad never let us growing up because he was a dentist, and he was afraid that I would fall and break my teeth. So we went to the ice skating rink, and he had to hold my hand because I didn't know how to ice skate, so it worked out really well. I don't know if that was intentional.
That sounds like a win-win.
No, I had never thought about that.
but it had snowed. It was pretty snowy, and Misha brought the meal, and it was just, I'd never had anything like that. They set a picnic table out, a tablecloth on the picnic table, and he made roast beef dipped in au jus sauce, and he brought ice cream, and he hid it in the snow. And we had to go try and find the ice cream, and then he put it on the tablecloth, and it was melty on there. And anyway, it was just really fun. And Misha and his date were there. We double dated for the food portion.
Yeah.
So then at the end, we were cleaning up, and Gin did something really silly. It was cute. And he took the tablecloth off, and he threw it around his shoulders and started running around the park like he was Superman with this tablecloth, and the ice cream dripped all the way down his back. And
she was really impressed.
I was, because he was just funny, and it didn't faze him too much. And then afterwards, we went back to the Russian house, and we just talked and talked and talked and talked and talked, and we both had dates that night. So this was an afternoon date.
Okay.
So I didn't really want to leave, and he didn't either.
I didn't either.
But we both had dates.
Oh, the life of BYU.
Yes. So he took me home, and it was just more stuff like that. I think I fell in love with him faster than he fell in love with me. I had, and like I said, I had been very prayerful. And so after every single time we got together, I just asked, am I supposed to go on another date? Because I was never going to make that mistake again.
Mm-hmm. Just saying step by step, prayer
by prayer. And so at one point, we were at a baseball diamond. We were walking around, and I said to him, I don't even know why. I just said, again, I don't know how because I knew he was dating 3 other girls besides me.
It was the last semester I was at university. And my mother had put the pressure on me the semester before,
because he was 25,
Yeah.
not married, almost into special interest.
3 days from special interest.
3 days.
Where I got
When
married. But anyway, my mother, who supported that I had joined the church, and
They paid for his mission, even though they were Catholic.
yeah. Anyway,
Wow.
she was wondering why my letters never included any discussion of girls I was dating, or pictures, or anything.
Because the Mormon Church is all about families.
Yeah, family and
Children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are you? Yeah.
exactly. So, so I was pretty intense, I guess.
Well, he had sent his mom, in response to that, he had a whole bunch of girls, one at a time, take a picture with him. And he sent them in the mail. 'Cause that's how
I'm
he
sure
did
she
everything.
appreciated that.
Well, we're all on the same, doorstep, the same day.
She
Probably
saw
right
him
after
do it.
church.
I like your style,
My
again. That's
family
what I would
home eating
do.
sisters,
So I knew he was dating these other girls, and I said to him something like, I would be disingenuous at this time if I dated anybody else because I actually love you. And so I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm not going to date anybody else until you tell me to leave.
And what was your take, Gen, when you heard that?
I don't know. I think my heart soared.
Oh,
My
wow.
spirit soared. But it's still, I'm still this very cautious and fearful individual because, any which way you look at it, the thought of getting married, and I think my biggest concern, and it probably was well justified, that could somebody put up with me for time and all eternity and not get bored and tired of me, sort of thing. That's just the way I felt, I guess. And
So after I had told him that, he had already planned on going to this one girl's house for Easter. So that whole time I was like, Heavenly Father, I've done everything you've told me to do. I have, I've stopped dating other people. And there was one guy that had come off his mission that I thought it was between him and Gen.
Mm-hmm.
And he was from my hometown, and I had deep feelings for him as well. But I felt like it was Gen. Like my whole life, I always just felt like I was going to marry someone from a different country.
Huh, that's interesting.
My dad was the president of the the Experiment in International Living. And so most summers we had people from Japan. We had people that came from Mexico that lived with us. And I just innately felt like I was going to marry somebody from a different country.
Right.
And so when he was gone to this girl's house, I just thought, okay, I've borne my soul to him, and he hasn't committed, and he's probably going to come home and tell me he's engaged to her. So I was just dreading that time. But I thought, well, I'd rather know than to keep prolonging this, right? So, which BYU times, it was only a few months, right?
Well,
but,
it's eternity.
Yeah. But we saw each other every day.
Yeah.
We were teaching a lot together, and we saw each other every day. So, but I backed up. I need to tell you something. So I think what motivated him to ask me out on a first date was something.
She got my attention.
I got his attention. So they have this, I think it was Wednesday night, where all the different international folk dance teams come together in the the Richards PE building, right? No.
Yeah, the Richards building.
And they would just put on folk dance music for fun, and you could just dance. So all the hot shots like him and all the PNs like me were there together, and we would dance these dances. So I was hanging around with a group of guys afterwards, which didn't include him. And I don't know, I was just in a silly mood because it's not like me. I don't know what came over me. But he came up and he said...
It was Valentine's Day.
It was Valentine's Day, and he said, how about a kiss for my teaching companion? And I said, okay. So I reached up and I kissed him right on the lips. But it wasn't like a romantic one.
Right.
But I just reached up, put my arm around him, and gave him a big kiss on the lips. Well, he had a little chocolate kiss in his hand. That's what he was going to give me.
I I liked her chocolate kiss better.
Better, that's right.
Well, it wasn't chocolate, but he blushed so much. And then I just burst out laughing, and I just thought it was the funniest thing when he handed me the chocolate kiss.
that belongs in a movie scene. That's great.
So anyway, then it progressed to a point, and I was just doing things for him. I Easter egged his room and put in all these little candies.
So she was being clear that she was, interested in a date.
And classy and smart and cute. And
well, so our dates, we would go to do things like, okay, so he introduced me to the Illuminati and the secret combinations of things which I didn't even know about. My dad was politically conservative, and he would always type up letters to congressmen, and he was always actively fighting government corruption. So I'd grown up with that, but I hadn't taken much interest. So our dates were definitely different. So we would go to the library and try and research the Illuminati and secret combinations, and we'd go to the card catalog. I mean, it's so funny because we didn't have computers in those days.
Right.
So we would go to the card catalog. We knew that they had a book, and it was just gone. So it was just gone. So this happened over and over and over again. So we would go to any places that we could to try and read and research, and so our conversations were interesting.
Yeah.
Anything but the standard normal thing.
It sounds like it.
And so, he would tell me about his family, and so.
And this is, it's interesting because, with your background, Gin, being from Australia, but having a background in Lithuania and seeing communism take hold in that country. Yeah. I mean, that probably, those kind of conspiracies and those kinds of, those things that actually happened to people, probably were very important to you.
Well, see, his family, his grandpa was taken by the Russians and sent to Siberia, and it was his mother's father, and she was supposed to be sent there too, along with her mother. But when the Russians came to get him, they were in separate cities, and so that's why they weren't taken. And he spent the rest of his life there, except for I think 1 year. He got let out, and your mom was able to see him one last time before he died.
Wow.
And so then the Germans, because Lithuania, these Baltic countries are in between these superpowers.
Right.
So then the Germans came in and took these boys, and they said, look, you can either come now, like you didn't have a choice. It was come now, or you can finish, for the seniors, like his dad, you can finish school and then you have to come. So they signed that they would rather finish school. They were hoping they wouldn't have to go. Mm-hmm. Well, the Germans took them and forced them to work in camps. So then when I married Gin and came over, his dad would tell us all about, are we going way too long?
No, we're good.
his dad would tell me all about these experiences, and his mom too, because I sat down there and just wanted to talk to them.
Right. Oh, I bet it was fascinating.
It was. And so, but that's how our dates were, is because I was learning about culture and about communism and about secret combinations and about, all of these things that...
I mean, the thing is, I grew up with those sorts of things being discussed somewhat in our home, and because of the experiences my parents had.
Yeah.
So I guess by and large in the United States, unless you were in a family that had some overseas experience like that, there's nothing like that to talk about here in the US, because people did not experience what many nations went through in the Second World War, when, on the one hand you have the Soviets come through, and then you have the Nazis go, through the countries, and people's experiences are very raw and very real, and many of these refugees after the war had no country to go back to, or had a war-torn land and were living in refugee camps and were so grateful to...
Or were behind the Iron Curtain and were under communist dictatorship.
No way to get away anyway. But.
So his family was split. So Gen's mom was an only child, and she fled. And what most people don't understand is that so the Russians killed more people than the Germans, by far.
Mm-hmm.
Their own people.
Yeah, but these kids that the Germans took, part of this treaty at the end of the war was the Germans had to give them back. But these boys were killed as traitors to and I never knew this, but Gen's dad was telling me all about it. He escaped because Gen's mom got false papers, and Gen's mother's mother pretended to be his mother. So the mother-in-law pretended to be the mother.
Right.
They weren't married yet, but they would be. Got fake papers through the underground. They escaped, went to a displaced persons camp. They got married, and then they waited for a country to take them.
Wow.
So they fled with just what they had in a suitcase when they knew the Russians were coming back, because Gen's mom and grandma knew that they were on that list, that they would go to Siberia.
You know what? We need to have that as a show. I think that story is important, and I would love to do it. And that's incredible. So I mean, your dates were just like, and it's interesting because I find that even with my wife, like you know, the things we talked about when we were first, you know, hanging out together, dating, it was not, you know, your typical, and maybe there's
a color.
right. What music stations do you listen to? You know, and maybe there's a pattern there, you know, that you know, we draw ourselves into interesting people and
meaningful relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he went away at Easter time, and my heart was just so on tenterhooks. I was worried that he was going to come home and tell me
you'd bore your soul.
I'd borne my soul to him, and I was worried he was going to come home and tell me he chose her. But instead, he told me that he went. And
what did you say again?
Boy, I don't know what I said. What did I say? Because,
you told me that you knew that you couldn't be with
this particular individual.
Yeah, that you actually... Well, okay, so this is something else about him. So I was used to guys always wanting to make out with me and me having to fight them off, okay? So Gen wasn't like that. So I'd give him that one. It was an innocent kiss.
Yeah.
You know? And after each of our dates, he would kiss my forehead or my cheek, sometimes my nose, but he would never kiss my lips. So it was after... I think it was just maybe even just a couple of weeks or so before we got engaged, after you came home from her house, that we were in the kitchen at the Russian house. And
we can't forget the song that came on. It was Donna Summer, Last Dance. Yeah. We're dancing in the kitchen.
Aww.
And he kisses me. And it's the only time in my entire life that I thought my knees went weak. Like I couldn't hold myself up.
Wow.
Because the kiss was so magical. And it was just like, I don't know, there was something happened. Like I knew he was the one for me.
Wow.
You know, he treated me like a lady. He was smart. He was spiritual. He was funny. He was kind. I got really sick. When I was there at that last semester at BYU, and he sat there and just sat by my bed, and not my bed, I was on the couch or something, I can't remember, but he stroked my head, and he, you know, put cold compresses, and this would be a pattern to come, but he was just good, just innately good. And
make me want to cry, honey.
Well, that I can attest, he is very good. That is true.
So anyway, so then I think he had intended to ask me to marry him in a probably more unique way, but my brother got married, and he came with me to the reception, and the family meal, and my dad was teasing him.
Embarrassed us a little bit.
Yeah, but he introduced him as my fiance, which we weren't at that time.
That's always exciting.
And he says, well, I know you're going to get married, so, you know, why not just something like that, right?
Your mother got upset with him, didn't she?
Yeah, she got really upset. And she thought that he'd blown it for Gen, that he would never want to marry me after that. And then my brother had a reception down in Henderson, and so that was the first time Gen came down there. And we stayed up late. We were, in those days, we didn't have cell phones, so we had, if you were really, like you had these really super long telephone cords.
Right.
So if you need to be in private, you'd have to walk and go into some other room to be in private, right?
Something our kids just don't understand.
They don't understand. And so the most private place was in the back hall that went out to the backyard
Right.
next to the bathroom.
Yep. Mine was outside the screen, outside the sliding glass door, down, sitting on the steps.
Okay, so you can understand.
I understand.
So we were sitting in that back hall and
Talking late into the night.
really late.
Wee hours of the night.
And I don't think he planned on asking me to marry. Oh, he's really funny. The 2 days before, he'd asked me to go steady with him.
2 days before he did.
Yeah.
He said,
I think we need to go steady, you know. And so then we were talking in the bathroom and...
It wasn't steady anymore.
onward and upward.
Talk about a romantic spot.
So anyway, there's times when I feel like, when during the hard times, I'm like, did I convince you to... were you going to ask me to marry you, or did I convince you to marry me? And he assures me he was going to, but I think that night I convinced him that, why aren't you just asking me to marry you? You know?
Well, I'm curious again from your perspective, like what Nancy mentioned, like kind of when, with that kiss, that really kind of, that seemed to be the moment that the world was, that it had gone to now after Gin. It had changed. What was it for you? When did you realize this is the woman that you wanted to spend the rest of your life with? What was there a moment? Was it just over time? How did that happen for you?
Well, Nancy had said we saw each other literally every day. So she just was a more and more wonderful person, and showing what a classy individual she was, and that she was not a stuck-up, good-looking girl. She was just a class act. And I made the comment to you before about feeling as though could I ever really keep somebody like this interested through a whole lifetime, because I don't have any particular airs about who I am or what I am or anything. I'm just a regular guy, so that had been always in the back of my mind, just fearful how could I ask somebody to be with me for forever? Could I meet their expectations and stuff? But anyway, I think I had just come to love Nancy naturally through that time, more and more as we went along. And things like what she said at the little baseball field. I just can't believe that I could be so blessed and fortunate to have somebody care about me that way. And it was just natural. It was a bad place and time maybe to propose, but I'm on my way, honey, to do it. I promise.
I know.
I'm saying this after we've been married for 40 years. Yeah.
Exclusive with And If Love Remains.
Yes.
No, that's really, really, beautiful. It's wonderful, and I think we need to do a part 2
Okay.
at some point, because this is and I know this is like the iceberg. We barely scratched the surface of your story, and it's an amazing story. So, maybe this is a good place to you're engaged, and let's catch up again and do it again sometime. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, so loved hearing your stories, and thank you guys so much for being on the show.
Yeah, well, so if we could wrap it up, I would just say that after 40 years, we still love each other.
Absolutely. And that's a fact. I've seen it personally. It's beautiful. So this is
And the best is yet to come.
Amen. Amen. My name is Mike Levitt, and this is And If Love Remains.